You know that Keeley Companies is all about fostering the world-class culture through their incredible cultural pillars. Well, it was time to add a seventh cultural pillar, Keeley Green. Guided by the mission to raise the sustainability standards by which they design, build, operate, and live, Keeley Green is dedicated to using a holistic approach to leave a positive impact on our environment, create a future that is sustainable for generations to come. In the words of Rusty Keeley, we are just getting started. You can learn more about that just getting started mentality and all the work they do by visiting my friends at Keeley Companies online at KeeleyCompanies.com.
Welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. John is the #1 national best-selling author of the book On Fire. He's a world-class inspirational speaker, and he's the host of the Live Inspired podcast. John interviews extraordinary individuals on their life story so that you can wake up from accidental living and more fully live your life story. Here's your host, John O'Leary.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. Today, I am joined live by a friend of mine. You're going to love her. Jen Jefferson is her name, and Jen is a wife. She's a mother. She's a veteran. And ultimately, the reason why I got to know Jen in the first place is she is the executive director of Focus Marines Foundation. Jen has dedicated her entire life to uplifting others, creating community, and changing lives. Today, Jen joins us, like I mentioned, live to share the transformative work of Focus. It's an organization I have been proud to partner with for more than a decade. Plus, Jen shares what it means to choose each other each day in marriage. I love that idea, choosing each other each day in marriage. Her family's decision to welcome her nieces into their home, it's an amazing story, and how trauma does not have to negatively define us going forward. My friends, if you need a reminder that love is an action, not a feeling, this conversation is for you. You will leave with actionable lessons on the power of choice, the value of building community, the strength to face life's challenges with purpose and hope and conviction that the best is yet to come. My friends, I want to thank you for tuning in this episode, and you're going to love it as I bring on my friend, and now yours. Her name is Jen Jefferson. Jen, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
Thank you so much for having me.
So oftentimes I begin these episodes by letting the audience know that I'm on the podcast today with a friend. And that's always mostly true. It's kind of a dotted line. Sometimes I know these people through speaking, or we've just been doing work together for a while. But in this case, today, I am on the episode with a friend. So I'm grateful for that. For those who may have missed my long-winded, rambling introduction of why I look up to you and why I look up to your work, if they were to bump into you in an airport or in a grocery store and meet you for the very first time, and you had to introduce yourself. So Jen Jefferson, tell me about you. How would you just describe yourself?
So I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and then I work with veterans. I am a veteran myself, and I continue to work with veterans today. I love it. I think that working with people who have sacrificed so much brings me a lot of joy. So that's me in a nutshell. But
So this mother, this wife, this friend of veterans, this veteran herself, servant, continues to serve forward. And I've always found when someone is so mission-led, it's normally either an experience that guided them toward that, or even like in the DNA of how they were raised. And in your case, it's a little bit of both. I know your dad has a remarkable story. That's why I'm going to start instead with your mom, because I'm sure she does too. Tell me about your mom growing up.
So my mom growing up, she actually has a little bit of a tragic story. Her parents died when she was a teenager, so she ended up being an only child. She was raised an only child by older parents, and so she, when she married my dad, stepped into his family and his life, but she didn't really have a home. So wherever we were, that's where we were. So and we traveled all over the world with my dad, being in the Army for as long as he was in the Army. And so, she created her community around her and the other wives and the other spouses, and with their children, that's who became our extended family. And through that, I think that's where I got my sense of family the family you create
Right.
is where they're at. So
How old was your mom when her parents died?
she was 16 and 17. They both died. They married much older and had her much older. And
Right.
then, so they were, yeah, she was not even 18 when she lost both of her parents.
Where did she meet your dad?
They met in an office. She worked in an office, and he got out of the Army after have gone into Vietnam, and he came out, and he was in the Job Corps, so he was fixing, like, I don't know, office equipment. And so they met that way, and both probably a little bit lonely, and, you know, found each other in that spark. And so they got married, and then my dad went back into the Army, and that's, you know, that's how my life started. Was he became, you know, back in the Army was comfortable for him after Vietnam.
And your mother, did she make do with that, or did she embrace that? Because it's, for those who are listening to our conversation who don't know what this is like, being the spouse of someone in the military, active duty, is you're serving too. To the same degree in some regards as the person who is actively serving. Your mother was moving around quite a bit with your dad. Was that hard for her? Did she just embrace it?
I think both. I think as much as I could understand as a child looking at it, I think both. I think my dad was gone a lot. There was a lot of field training. We did a lot of education stuff. He switched from enlisted to officer in a warrant officer program, and that required a lot of school. And so having 3 kids herself and trying to make sure that if one of us got injured, she knew what to do. And that always, of course, happened when he was out of town. So, you know, it was just growing up without him around a lot. And she did. She I think handled both the best she could. So
you're observing this as a girl, a little one growing up. What was your vision for your life as you were looking ahead with pigtails and everything else as a little one, you know, chasing butterflies? What did you imagine yourself doing?
I don't know. I really felt like I understood what I wanted. I always wanted to be an accountant. I don't know. I like numbers. I like things that have order and process, but that just wasn't what worked out for me. I think that when I got out of high school, I ended up in Georgia, and I'd not really lived in the States at this point. So
Right.
I graduated high school in Japan. I ended up having to go back to Japan because it was so much of a culture shift that I did not know how to handle it. And so my dad took me back over there. I lived with a friend. And then when I came back, I was like, I don't know what to do. I was kind of just a little bit lost.
So then what?
Then I, waited about a year after high school, worked a couple of jobs at the same time. I was exhausted and barely making it and needed to be out on my own, and decided that something had to shift very drastically. And so I was like, I know what, I'll join the military. It was something I grew up around. I thought I understood it, but being on the child side is so different than being on the actual the person serving side. So I went into the recruiter for the Army first, and I was okay. And then the Marines, you just don't join the Marine Corps, you become a Marine. And that just was so powerful to me. And that's a Marine for life. Like, you don't lose that. So.
Why is that? People claim that, and when you're with a Marine, they say it and they model it and they live it and they watch out for each other still. I was with a couple Marines last weekend. They had a sick Marine that they were going out to visit. Once you're in the family, you're in the family.
Right.
Why do you think that is with the Corps?
I just think that they're so entrenched in tradition and brotherhood and sisterhood that it is, I don't want to say inbred, but it is like indoctrinated into you from the time you join, that you are to take care of the person on your right and your left. And, you learn the history. It is part of the education of being in the military. It's not just you're proud of your unit. You are proud of the Marine Corps. And these were just normal folks who joined the Marine Corps, did amazing things. And that could be any one of us. We all raised our hand. And so, not that you think it could be you, but now that I sit in a room with all those guys now, it really could be anybody that is called up to do those amazing feats, and storybooks will be written about these guys, and history will be written from the guys that I'm serving now, because they are just normal people who raise their hand to serve in the military. And so there's a Marine Corps pride, and I think other branches have unit pride, and Marines definitely are proud of being in the Marine Corps.
Yes, they are very proud of this.
Yes.
You grew up the daughter of an Army.
Yes.
Now you're in the Marine Corps.
Correct.
Now you're on Paris Island.
Yes.
Tell me, a young, petite, beautiful lady on Petite Island, like, what is that like?
That was quite a little shock, but I honestly knew, I never doubted that I could do it. I always knew that I could get through it. I don't know where that came from, but somewhere deep inside of me, I knew that I was going to be okay and I could get through boot camp, but my first interaction, I thanked the drill instructor for a pin, and oh my, you don't thank Marines. They get thanked on the 1st and the 15th, and that there's no need to thank them outside of that. And so it was just quite a little bit of a culture shock. And there's sand fleas there, and I slapped a bug away from me. You only do that once, so you don't do that again. And so no, it was actually kind of fun. It was difficult, but there were fun aspects to it, especially looking back. I don't know that I would do it again, but it was fun. It was perfect for what I needed at that time.
So you and I share a bunch of friends who have gone through a similar experience. Gunny, Nick Popovich, shares with me that you have a ton of hilarious stories from boot camp.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I know it's sometimes like when someone says like, be funny, it's like, well, how do I do that? But if something comes to mind right now, when you think of what Nick is referring to as a funny story from your time in boot camp, what story comes to mind first?
I have a very unique maiden name, and so my name got, just mutilated, and obviously it was hilarious from listening to it from the other side, but my drill instructors were so clever and could come up really quickly with, it's my maiden name is Tisha, but they were like tissue and like be like really gross with it. And then another time that song Hoop There It Is came out, and we hadn't heard it yet because we were in boot camp, and oh my gosh, she taught it to us, and every time she all right, perform, we'd have to all say, Hoop, there it is, without ever having heard the song yet. And so she was showing us off to all the other drill instructors. And so I always thought that was so funny, especially when I got out. So
it was while you were serving that you met Brian.
Yes.
I think you bumped into each other in Japan,
yes,
and then became more acquainted in the United States. You were serving with a bunch of guys. A bunch of strong, good-looking, intelligent, funny Marines. Very capable, very confident young guys. Why Brian? What was it about him that you were attracted to?
Oh my God, he's so funny. He really is hilarious, and he's smart and so engaging and all the things that is interesting. So when someone's interesting, it makes you interested. So there was all of that, and he's cute, and it was fun, and yeah, he was awesome. He's still awesome. So
25 years?
28 now.
28 years.
Yes.
What's been the secret to almost 3 decades of this couple remaining together?
We choose each other every day. We even say that to each other, like, he's my favorite and I'm his favorite, and we make that choice every day. We know love is more than a feeling, it's action, and so we do action every day.
You're also raising a few daughters together.
Just a couple.
Let's talk about it, because it's an unusual family that you have going on, in
Yes.
particular over the last 5 years or so. So let's talk about our earlier days. Baby, then a third baby. Is that correct? All
Yes,
girls?
all girls, yes.
Tell me about that, Mom.
Oh, so in and out, I was the stay-at-home mom. Brian's career was taken off, and he traveled tremendous amounts, so I needed to be home with the kids. One of us did consistently, and that was going to be me. I stayed home with them. I loved being a stay-at-home mom. It was everything. And then as they got older, actually, we lived in Germany for a year, and that's where my youngest was born. We didn't live there with the military. We went on our own, and so she was born in a German hospital, and that was quite an experience in and of itself. But, amazing. No more kids after that. And
You thought?
yeah, so we were just living our life. We had 2 of our girls were grown, and one of them was about to graduate college, and my middle daughter, and then my youngest daughter was driving, and so we were about to be empty nesters, and then I got a call from my sister, and then she needed us to take her 2 kids, and so we ended up with 2 more girls, and so we went back a little bit, a few years, and yeah, so now we have 5 girls, and all varying ages, 26 down to 14.
In our world, we call these inflection points. These moments that change everything that happens after that call comes in or after that yes is given. You have 3 daughters. Your life is awesome. Your marriage is strong. And it's about to get, they talk about the good days. Like, yes, it's great raising kids and the diapers and kindergarten. It's a blast. And it's also a blast once you have time with your spouse. You are about to experience that.
Yes.
And then that call comes in. To the degree you're willing, share what led up to the call and then what led up to you saying, of course, we'll take these girls.
So what led up to it is my sister made a few bad choices and ended up not able to take care of her kids anymore. So It was between us and foster care, and we just knew we couldn't live with ourselves. You know, we have family members that were stepping up or wanting to step up. My dad was ill. Just everybody had a reason why. We were the only family support unit that could potentially do it and do it well enough, right? Like, because it was going to be hard regardless. You can make all the decisions you want, but then in the moment you say yes, you think you know what you're stepping into, and then real life starts happening. And these kids didn't come in an amazing shape. They're great kids, but they've had some trauma, and dealing with children with trauma was way different than dealing with kids that didn't have that type of trauma. And so maneuvering that and trying to figure out how best to support them and help them through that and show them that they are amazing and this was just a moment, and how do we get them to living their best life and not letting this time define them as their, you know, big time in their life. It was just a moment in their life. That's the difficulty. And then recognizing that at the end of the day, they still choose. Like, no matter how much we want it for them, it is still their choice. And I think that was the hardest part for us, was reconciling that. Was we can do everything and still they might choose to accept that as the only moment in their life that matters. And I don't know what else to do with that. So we're still working on it.
You're trying to empower these young ladies to recognize the dignity and the value and the worth of their lives. And you were trying to do that with your 3 kids.
Correct.
Before that.
Yes.
And you try to do it with your neighbors and your dad as he aged and everything else. Like, the goal is to remind people that their life has value. What have you found? Because I'm about to shift from your family to your broader Marine and your fellow veteran family, the focus. But before we get there, what have you found to be most beneficial when you're trying to inspire someone to recognize you have agency, your life matters? Make the right decisions. Don't be defined by yesterday. What have you found as a mom is most meaningful in that world?
I really think just leading by example. We all have things that happen in our life that isn't ideal. Like, it might not be as extreme. There's no measuring stick. Our bodies don't really know the difference between their trauma and our trauma. It feels like trauma in our bodies. And so just recognizing that just because that happened to you doesn't make you any different, and just understanding that everybody's walking around that way, and being kind and just trying to help them, at least show them the example and be that person. I don't always get it right. I mean, by any means, I am not perfect, but I try to instill in them, like, yes, life is hard. It is hard. It is not easy, and nothing is easy, but there is choice, and you have a choice. You can focus on this or you can focus on that. And I can honestly say, we were about to get to the work part. Had I not been at Focus for as many years as I have, I'm not quite sure where I would be right now. I have been exposed to some amazing people. I've heard some amazing speakers. I really have. Somebody uses the word people blessed often, and I know I am people blessed by that organization, and I have them. I see this every day. It has helped us both get through this.
The language you're using sounds like language pulled directly from Focus.
Yes.
And when you're saying this, you have choices.
Right.
They're buzzwords if you're not careful.
Right.
And they're transformational words if you actually model it. Your husband, Brian, I think about a decade ago, made his way out to Focus.
Yes.
What led him out there? And when he returned home, what did he say about it?
Oh my gosh, he was working with a guy. It was a networking guy, and he was in the community, and he was older, and he was out there speaking on entrepreneurship. And my husband owned his own business and a Marine, and so that gentleman said, hey, you might be perfect for this, and brought him along and had him share his story to a bunch of Marines. And he had no idea what he was stepping into. He called it the wrong organization because we hadn't yet heard of Focus. I was out of town covering for him somewhere, and so he could do this. And he came home and he was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if they're going to have me back, but you need to get involved with this. And I signed up that weekend, and I made the cut, was at the next session, and we have been involved every single session since.
Give us the background then on what Focus is.
So Focus is a program where it's a 7-day program where veterans have an opportunity to come and really transform their life if they want to. It's a self-reflective, self-leadership program, and we give the space to allow them to see what's working in their life. We ask the tough questions like, who are you?
Yeah.
And when your buttons are pushed, what are you doing when that happens? And is that serving you? And if it's not, here's some tools on how to change it. We are non-clinical, so it's not threatening for veterans. They're not going to be diagnosed with anything. And then we're peer support. So all of the people that have gone through the program and have really exemplified what it can do in your life come back and help these guys walk through and girls walk through the program. And so it's peer support as well. So we call it a non-clinical peer support program, for veterans to break those glass ceilings that we all tend to put on ourselves.
And you may have the stats at your fingertips, but there was a time after Iraq, after Afghanistan, where our guys or young people were coming home with very little support.
Right.
And quietly suffocating, and then loudly suffocating in some cases. And there was a group of Vietnam era leaders who saw the need, and instead of just identifying it, did something about it. So here comes Focus. And then here comes group after group after group of guys, ladies, looking for help, recognizing that there's more for them in their life. Brian goes first, tells you that you should check it out. Then you attend. What did you experience on your first visit?
Oh, I don't even think I processed it for, probably weeks, because it was so overwhelming. The amount of, first of all, I hadn't been in a room with that many Marines in a long time. So
it is a different deal. This is not a 40 soft-spoken executives or nurses or educators. This is a robust group of veterans.
Yes, and they're very proud, and it is a lot of Marines, and I was just in awe, and I just knew, okay, I found my place, so now what do I do? How do I really get in here and dig in? And I think, we just got in and dug in, and I had more time and was able to do more, so I was able to volunteer weeks at a time and organically grew into the position that I'm in now.
Which is what?
I'm the executive director now, so they have entrusted that position to me, and I do get a lot of mentorship, so I know I'm not alone, but yes.
Let's talk about the need. I'm amazed. I have the honor of going every quarter, and I'm amazed every quarter that the room is filled again. And then we leave thinking we've done our good deed, and then the room is filled again and again and again. So what is the need that has these guys from around the country hopping on planes? Talk about courage. They're hopping on planes, leaving behind struggle, and exposing themselves so vulnerably to strangers. These are fellow veterans, and they're fellow servants, and they're fellow Americans in this case. But it is so bold. So what is the need that has these guys and ladies leaving home to come to a new place?
I think the internal struggle is just life is not what they expected it to be. They are not living in their purpose. They're depressed. They've got anxiety. A lot of them are struggling with addictions or insomnia. They cannot sleep. Their self-doubt is huge. They've got issues in their relationships. They're depressed. They've got moral injury. There's PTSD issues. There's traumatic brain injury issues. There's physical limitations that they've not yet really handled, and then also some of it's just the loss of the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
They're now out there by themselves on an island. In the Marine Corps, you don't do anything alone. So when you get out, you feel very alone. You've lost that circle of people, whether you all agreed you were all fighting the same fight.
Yeah.
So when you lose that, it is very, very lonely to feel like you are alone in your struggle. And I think coming up to, we are almost at our 50th session. We're in March will be our 50th session. We've had almost 1,130 graduates now. And this year, 75% of our graduates were referrals from other graduates. Wow. So some of it is our staying power. We've been able to stay active for all of these years. And so they're trusting us that we're going to continue to be there. And so they're referring their friends and saying, hey, this worked for me and this might work for you. And they're just looking for something better. We really can't help somebody that's not already taking their first steps to get the help that they need. So
you answered a question earlier by saying if their lives can get better. And then you said, if they choose it.
If they choose it, yeah.
If they choose it. So they made a bold choice by choosing to hop on a flight, come to St. Louis, make their way out to this incredible property. And I know the person who sponsors this does not like the limelight, so we won't give it to him. But even that is telling. That's someone who has this brilliant, beautiful piece of land and buildings all around it to house these guys, wants no attention for the work he so quietly does. So shout out to this beautiful servant. How do you fund this program? You bring in speakers and thought leaders and nurses and pharmacists. Like, there's an army of folks around these servants. Who funds all that?
We are funded by private donors, and we do some grants, but we take no government funding so that we can have complete autonomy and make our own decisions. And nobody is telling us how to run our program. We take a lot of advice and a lot of suggestions from our participants on what the need is, but we don't have anybody pulling our strings saying this is how you have to do it, because we are privately funded.
Let's talk about the program. And we're going to talk about it specifically from our veterans' perspective. But as our listeners and viewers listen in and watch us discuss this, be selfish. Because the process that works for these incredible veterans and servants would work for any of us as we try to take agency in our lives. So without giving away all the secret sauce, we come in town on a Saturday. What happens from there?
So on Sunday, really, it's just about getting everybody to meet each other, because the hard work starts Monday morning. So we want everybody to feel like they're comfortable enough to talk about things that they might not have ever talked about in front of anybody before. So they've got to be comfortable enough to do that. Sunday, they get to go around the whole property and see all the buildings and really get acclimated with where they're at. And then Monday, we have facilitators that come in. They take this information that we teach goes all over the world, and anybody could learn it, like you said. And we just gear it towards veterans and Marines specifically, but any branch could absolutely come, and they do. They start with kind of going back through who they are, and it's like why they are the way they are, so they understand how their thought process even gets ingrained into them. And same for all humans, but there's also ways, if that's not working for you, if it's really being the roadblock, like if your anger is the roadblock, how do you stop that from being the only thing that controls your actions? And here's how you stop that. So it's not a motivational program by any means. This is tough work. You've got to actually put the work in and stay engaged in the process. But sometimes once you hear something and know, like, oh goodness, I just have to do this, it's easier next time to say, oh, I just have to stop for a second and really choose my response. So I'm not really responding out of anger. I can, have less of an emotional reaction and choose my thoughtful response.
These are grizzled veterans. They wear their armor, even though they put it away years and years ago, but the armor remains on. And part of your job is to help them strip out of it and be comfortable in the uncomfortableness of life. And then not knowing.
Right.
Like there's beauty in just being okay with that. I have the joy of being part of your Monday evening. But before I have a little dance with these guys and ladies, I get to cry a little bit because the brisket ladies serve us dinner and then get about 3 minutes in the limelight. Tell our listeners, in addition to the brisket that these women serve, these Marines and these fellow veterans, what makes their work so remarkable?
Their work is so remarkable because each one of them have Marines in their lives, and they have also lost Marines to suicide, and that is why they come to Focus, so that they can make sure these guys that are there understand that, yes, that is an option, but please don't let that be an option. Choose something else. Live your life. Don't succumb to that option. We do have amazing parents that so bravely come and talk about that loss, because as a mom, I can't even imagine how brave, and I get emotional listening to it every session because they're my friends, and I don't even know how they do it. I am always in awe of that. And but they do it because they know it does make a difference in these veterans' lives, to know that somebody on the other side will have that pain transferred to them. It doesn't go away. It's not, nobody gets over things like that. And so really they're there to talk about that suicide awareness, and let's stop it. Let's not just be aware of it. Let's give different choices. Let's make suicide alternatives and suicide different choices. Do something else. Anything. Get a hobby, which we do talk about that as well. Get a hobby, because some of them are coming so lost, they don't even have a hobby. They're just existing. They're not really living. So
after the brisket ladies depart the stage, usually Gunny comes up, does an introduction of O'Leary. I have an opportunity of speaking with these leaders for a while, and at the end we form a little line, and I just get to hear their stories.
Oh gosh.
And it's intended to be 10 minutes, and it's normally longer than the entire 90-minute speaking portion. It's usually about 90 minutes or 2 hours or 3 hours. At the last one, the most recent experience, one of the gentlemen, who will remain, of course, nameless, came up and said, I came here because I expected to say goodbye to one of my commanding officers. And he said, that's the only reason I came. I wanted to look him in the eyes, tell him thank you, but I was going to go home to take my own life. That was the entire intent of attending Focus. And then as he hugged me that night, he said, I'm making a different commitment now. I'm making a commitment to live. Wow. I think I know who we're talking about here. That's one of 30 stories, 4 times a year for a decade, that this organization has been part of. And I could spew on and on and on about some of the guys who I've remained in touch with. But I'd like to hear from your perspective as you look around at some of the graduates, these guys who come in tough and muscular and bearded and everything else on Saturday, but then they leave genuinely tough and genuinely courageous and genuinely clear on what their next right step is the following Saturday. Give me a story or some stories, Jen, that just motivate you to do this work and come back 3 months later.
So we have authors, people that have written amazing books of pure redemption that actually helped me get through some of what I've been going through. We have guys that have started businesses with their sons. It was a hobby, and now they've turned it into a money-making business so they could spend time with their children. There are people that have started college and received their master's degree and now are therapists working with children and veterans because that's their passion and who they want to help. I got an email just a few days ago from one of our graduates, financially debt-free, getting back into a relationship with her children, co-parenting with somebody she couldn't even speak to, and moving to be closer to her children. And it is just beautiful stories of them taking charge and seeing the value that they have in their own lives, and understanding their worth in that, and fighting for themselves, not just self-sacrificing for other people, but realizing that they are worth that too, and putting the work in on themselves. And I think that is we try to instill in them is we're also like giving. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard, oh, well, if somebody needs the spot more than me, just let them have it. I can wait, or I'm good, I'm not that bad. But that's just a servant's heart. And I think all people that join the military have that service kind of mentality, and it's so easy to do that. And so I think we try to just tell them, no, it's your turn. You applied for a reason, and now let's take your turn. And so I think them doing that and starting that process, it just gets that snowball rolling so that it just gets bigger and bigger. And so their wins get bigger and bigger as well. So, I mean, just beautiful stories.
There's so many. I mean, you're glazing over them because there's so many. So I'm just going to have you get the lens out and look down the barrel of one person. So one of our mutual friends, and now one of the servants out there in leadership, is a guy named Todd Nicely, Corporal Todd Nicely. Yes. Tell his story. He's been on our podcast before, so some of our listeners and viewers may be familiar with Todd Nicely, but not as familiar as you and I are. Tell me about Todd Nicely. How did you become introduced to him?
So Todd Nicely, I had heard his name for years because he's local to St. Louis area, and he's one of 5 quad amputees that survived, and he has prosthetics, and he was living down at Lake of the Ozarks and really struggling. I think once he got out of the hospital and away from all of the eyes on him, he really just lost his purpose and was lonely and really looking for something. And then he also tried to commit suicide and was just in a bad place. His relationships were struggling, he was struggling, and I think at that point there were people in his life that had been talking about focus and finally had got him to agree. And so he came to focus and he started coming back. He was really busy after he came through the program. He started doing things for himself and getting himself. He was working out. He started doing rugby.
And let me just pause. Just to make sure you weren't like doing the dishes and the dishes clanked, right? As Jen said, the dude has no arms and no legs. Okay, so let's make sure we understand that this man, this servant, this veteran, this Purple Heart recipient, and this remarkable human being has no arms and no legs and attempted afterwards to take his own life, hit rock bottom, came into focus, and now you and others are leading him forward, and he's taking agency and leadership over his own life.
Yes, and he started doing awesome. I saw him play wheelchair rugby, and I think he was the most aggressive person out there. He does everything with gusto, and so when he was able to start coming out and being a mentor, now he comes out and he's a mentor out there, and I hear he might be writing a book now. Like, he really is getting into his purpose in life, and he has a wife and children and a home, and he is doing really, really well. Life's not ever going to be perfect for him, but he is making the best of it. And he refuses to be seen as a victim to his situation. He knows what he signed up for, and that was the price he was willing to pay. And it sometimes sucks, and it's hard, and he gets through it, though. He leans on his support system, and now he is a support system to other people, and he's really awesome.
Well, there's a quote that I wrote down from Todd Nicely when I was asking him about the executive director of Focus. She's across the table from me right now. Her name's Jen Jefferson. This is what he wrote to me. Always a fearless leader. Jennifer puts everyone before herself, and she makes sure that we have what we need to make sure that we can get our jobs done and done well. That's the kind of person she is. Her choices are changing lives. That's a tattoo you should be familiar with. She certainly has changed mine. Todd Nicely.
That's very sweet.
Please respond.
Oh my gosh, that means the world to me, knowing Todd and his leadership skills, and for him to think I am a good leader actually is, so humbling, and I don't even know what to say. I'm trying not to cry because that means a lot to me. So that is huge.
For those who really know the Live Inspired podcast, if you've heard the Todd Nicely interview, there was a little Easter egg there. When he was bragging on you, he said, her choices are changing lives. Tell our listeners who may not be familiar with Todd's story why those words mean a lot to him, and probably you as well, Jen.
So he got those tattooed on him right before his second deployment, and when he stepped on the IED, he made his fire team stand behind him, and I think he just felt something was not right, and he ended up taking the brunt of that explosion, and knowing that choice changed lives, his and all those people around him, and he really himself is changing a lot of lives. A lot of the guys from his unit come to our program as well, and are also serving in our program, and he's changing a lot of lives. Then they're changing lives, and he created quite a lot of snowballs as well with his leadership, and that really means a lot that he said that. That's very sweet.
We have had another guest on our podcast. His name is Nick Popovich. Gunny. Tell our listeners who may not have heard that in episode who Nick is.
Oh my gosh, Nick is amazing. He was a tank commander, and he is one of the best leaders. I am always looking towards him. He mentors me, even though we work really closely together. He is definitely one of my main mentors, but he was a tank commander. He was when Saddam Hussein's statue got pulled down. He was there, and he pulled the statue down. He was on Time magazine with the cigar in his mouth, but he ended up getting it in the head with an RPG and taught himself how to read and write again, and he's doing really well. But he's our program director, so he comes out as a prior drill instructor, gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, and he leads our program, and he keeps us on time, and he's amazing. He is an amazing leader.
On the chance, again, you're doing the dishes and you missed what we just said here. The dude was in his tank, got hit in the head with an RPG. That caused some damage.
Yes.
And yet this amazing man who's almost completely without his ability to see,
Right.
sees so clearly, lives so boldly, is so tenacious, so on fire with life. I love the man. And apparently he thinks fairly highly of you because this is what he wrote. Tell Jennifer that she is caring, excellent in her teamwork. She is patient and passionate. I love those two words because they don't always go together. She is patient and passionate. And then he went on to say, she is simply an incredible leader. That's from Marine Gunnery Sergeant, Silver Star recipient, my brother, Nick Popovich. Well, I'm not going to let you off the hook, so say something. Nick's
gosh.
listening. Now it's awkward. The silence is killing him.
That really is, that makes me feel amazing. Like I definitely, I don't even know what to say. I'm so like, I'm at a loss for words. I don't know how to respond to that. Somebody I look up to saying such nice things about me. So that's very kind. And I hope to live up to those words in a way that I don't even know what to say.
I knew I had to get you some, so I figured if I can't move you through your own life story, I'll poll some of the guys whose life you have positively influenced and let them quote back to you the effect that you're having. So the final one I'll quote to you, and then we're going to begin moving toward the conclusion of this episode, is Major Harry Hager.
Oh, goodness.
Tell our audience a little bit about this remarkable human being, Harry Hager.
Oh, he is one of the best storytellers I have ever met in my life. I have sat out at Focus around a table listening to him tell stories for years. I'm not interested in telling my stories, just listening because he's so full of history and his detail is so there. And he was a major in the St. Louis Police Department, and he really is an amazing, amazing man. He has served his country in Vietnam. He has Purple Hearts. He has an amazing family that love him tremendously, and he's one of the founders of Focus, so he also saw the need and stepped up to the challenge, and he's one of the reasons our program is as amazing as it is today. He definitely is a leader that I look up to and make sure that I'm not letting him down in any way and stepping into a position that hopefully he's happy with. So no, he's awesome. He's awesome.
This is what Harry wrote about you. And by the way, Harry Hager is truly a hero.
Yes.
And the best kind of hero. Just does it. Doesn't look for the light. Doesn't post about it online. Just serves and serves and serves and does it well. The last person in every single Focus gathering to say goodbye to me and hug me is Harry. He walks outside. It's pitch black out there, man. It's always dark out there at the time we leave. Walks me out to the vehicle, makes sure I get there safely, makes sure my seatbelt is on, always reminds me, be careful, the deers are running around right now. And then I drive away and he goes back to work. Late 70s, whatever his age is, and this man is just still serving. But this is what he says about you. These past 10 years with Focus, her dedication to the program has shown everyone, and I mean everyone, that she has a huge caring heart. I and everyone else have become huge fans of this woman, Jennifer Jefferson. Tell her we love her. That is from Major Harry Hager.
I mean, is your goal to make me cry? Because I'm trying really hard not to. These are so humbling, and these are my heroes. I don't know how to handle them saying such nice, amazing things to me. I just hope that I truly am living up to the words that they're saying about me, because that is my goal, is to make sure that I do right by them and by our veterans and by every graduate that comes to Focus, is to continue to make this program better and lead everybody into the next stage of Focus.
Well, I haven't been there for all 50 sessions, but darn near all of them. And it is getting better. It is getting sharper. Each program seems like the effect you're having on your leaders improves. And they leave healthier than when they entered, with long-term skills to become better tomorrow than they were yesterday.
Right.
That's huge. I've spoken now 2,700 times as a career around the country and around the world, and frequently we'll get little gifts from clients. And dude, what do you do with 2,700 gifts? You can't hold on to them all. So I give them away. I give them to my children. I just do various things with them. One gift that I have, though, right above my desk, right behind this wall, is a K-bar with the name John O'Leary on it, given to you by your friends at Focus Marines. I love the work you do. I love the people that do it. I love you. I'm grateful for your leadership. For those listening to our conversation, though, or watching us right now feeling like, man, what a love fest going on in the Rim. I'm glad they care for each other. I'm glad they're on mission. But I'm no hero. And I've got no one looking out for me. And I've got no one opening up their beautiful estate to bring me in quarterly. For folks that just feel discouraged by life, what would you say to them right now?
Find somebody and make yourself vulnerable and ask for help. Like, put yourself out there and say you're not okay and start talking. And if you're a veteran, if that's what you're asking me, if you're a veteran, go on our website. We have an application right on that front page. It comes right to me, and I will take it from there, and we'll start our conversation, our relationship at that point, and we'll see what we can do. And that's really how you start. But I would just say you've got to recognize first that you need help, and be okay with that, because there's a lot of people out there that need help. I need help. We all need help. I don't do this alone either. I have lots of support behind me.
Right.
Obviously, we just read it, all these amazing men work in this program that I work in, and we all are doing this together, but we lean on each other very heavily. So yeah, we can't do it alone. So just recognize that.
And then I was thinking, as you were answering about the K-bar, this, it's both a weapon, but also the tool that you use to open up canned goods, mail, dig a ditch, whatever.
Right,
It is multi-purpose. I love it. Next to that K-bar is a ball signed from one of your classes. And you may remember that. It's one of my favorite stories, though, because there was a gentleman who would not engage in our content. And there's a way to be alive in life and be dying while you're there. And as I looked out as a speaker, I could see this man who was choosing death. And a couple different times, he either quietly or more overtly called out BS on me. And I said, brother, listen, if you uncross your arms and engage in this, I'll bring out one of the baseballs that I received. He did. He played along. He bought in. His mood and morale changed. And by the end of it, he was leading forward the others. It was incredible to see. So the following day, maybe 2 days later, came out with a ball from one of the Jack Buck baseballs. Like, this is precious stuff, man. Gave it to him, turned around, left. And then a day or two later, this guy shows back up with that baseball that I gave him and another baseball signed from all of his classmates. And I have both of those baseballs right next to that K-bar because it reminds me, you can't give it away.
Right.
Jack Buck did not lose out when he gave away the 60 baseballs or the first Hall of Fame base. He didn't become poorer through generosity. All of that to say, if there's someone listening to our conversation or a whole bunch listening and they're like, man, I want to get involved with Focus, where would they go to learn more about supporting either financially or in some other way?
So our website is www.focusmarines.org, and right there on the main site is donate now or apply now or volunteer now. So all three of those things are right on the main page, and we need all three of those things to continue doing what we're doing. We need participants, volunteers to help do what we do. It takes over 100 volunteers to put one program together, and some of them don't even meet the participants, but we need them all to make it happen, and then we need the donors to make sure that the participants can come.
And we need participants.
Yes, we need participants.
We want to have classes filled with guys and ladies who are struggling in life, who we get to love.
Yes.
So if you know participants also, please join us and click the link, learn more.
Yes.
Well, Jen, I know you are a friend of mine. I also know you're a listener of this podcast. So these 7 Live Inspired questions may not catch you off guard, but it's always a little different when the microphone is on you. The bright light is shining down upon you. Get ready to march through the Live Inspired 7. Question number 1, what's been the most impactful book you've ever read?
The most impactful book, I want to say, is The Count of Monte Cristo. It gave me my love of reading.
I know you love reading.
I love reading, but the Count of Monte Cristo, I just loved that book.
Why?
I don't know. It was such a well-written book, and I just could not wait to turn the pages. So it just gave me a joy of reading, and I just can voraciously go through books now, and I prefer fiction. I know that's probably not the best, but
she says this to a nonfiction writer, so my heart is on the table and stepped down upon by a boot.
No, many times I've read your book.
What is one positive characteristic or one trait that you possessed as a young girl growing up in the United States or around the world that you wish you exhibited as brilliantly today?
I wish I was outgoing. I'm not outgoing anymore. I'm a little bit more reserved and introverted, which is why it's hard to talk about myself.
The two become one. It's a
Yes.
beautiful characteristic. If your home caught fire and your husband, your 5 girls, your animals are all out, and you have an opportunity of running in and grabbing one thing, what would you grab?
My wedding photo album book. It's not scanned in anywhere or digital copies. It's 4x6s, so we need those.
I think you have a job.
I know.
Here it is, kind of over the holiday season. Why not at least take some shots? If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous day and have a long conversation with anyone living or deceased, who would you like to be next to?
This one is harder. I really think Sacagawea was really kind of one of those women that I'm like, she doesn't get enough credit for what she did.
Tell us what she did.
So she led Lewis and Clark through the whole western half of the country with a baby on her back, but they get all the credit. In my opinion, she was pretty awesome. So
My understanding is, had she not gone, those guys don't come back.
right.
I mean, it's
Yes.
not like she taught them better ways to, make roots into food or something. And this is a woman who led them forward and deserves an awful lot of credit and
Yes.
respect for that.
Right.
Cool. First time I've heard that name here. It's a great one to share. What's the best advice she or anyone else has ever given you?
So somebody that I respect tremendously told me probably within the last couple years, he said, you need to learn how to oil your feathers like a duck. And so I didn't quite understand what that meant, but basically he was telling me that I needed to learn how to take care of myself so that things could roll off my back a little easier and not take things so personally.
Wow, man, I wasn't expecting it to go that way. I love it. I think a lot of us could learn how to apply a little bit more oil to our feathers.
Yes.
You're not alone.
That's a great one.
I'm nodding my head, and every one of our listeners, if they're still paying attention, are nodding theirs as well. What advice would you give yourself at age 20?
Just relax. Life is good. Just relax. Don't be so stressed out. Your life is good.
Jen Jefferson, it has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
She served well.
Married for 28 years, raised her 3 babies, struggles in her own family led to 2 other girls needing help. She brings them into her house. Spouse says you should check out this group of crazy, wild men and women who come together quarterly. You go and you don't leave and you serve. I invite you to do this podcast. You say yes right away. I think those words that you've chosen for your gravesite, the rest of us would agree with fully. So Jen Jefferson, thank you for serving well.
Thank you.
Always faithful.
Yes, always.
Thank you for living Simplify.
Thank you.
My friends, that is the voice of a woman who served well. She remains ever faithful. Her name is Jen Jefferson. She is with my friends at the Focus Marines Foundation. My name is John O'Leary, and today is your day. What a gift it is. March forward and live inspired. Well, after listening to the conversation between Jen Jefferson and John O'Leary, you now know why I look up and respect and love her the way I do. And I think if you listen to that conversation, you also know why I look up and respect and love this great organization called Focus Foundation to the degree that I do. If you enjoyed tuning into today's episode, I have a feeling you would love our military and first responders playlist. In addition to the recordings of the conversation with Corporal Todd Nicely, we talked about him during the conversation a moment ago, and Gunnery Sergeant Nick Popadich. You'll also hear from the United States Secret Service Special Agent Evia Pompadours, Apollo 13's Captain Jim Lavelle, and many other leaders, servants, and heroes. Don't miss as I discuss life and love and service with these American heroes. You can listen to the military and first responders playlist now by visiting me online at johnolearyinspires.com/podcast. Family, friends, servants, and leaders, I want to thank you for tuning in to this week's episode and encourage you to live boldly in the face of adversity until next week's episode. So for this time and until next time, my name is John O'Leary. Today is your day. What a gift it is. Live inspired. Keeley Companies was started almost 50 years ago by the one and only Larry Keeley. What started as a small family-owned paving company in St. Louis has grown to a nationally known full-service construction, development, and restoration partner. Larry the Legend, as he is affectionately known, has been a part of this growth every step of the way and continues to provide guidance as his son Rusty, my buddy, drives their vision and achieves results on purpose. His unwavering foundation of a family culture with a focus on people has gotten Keeley Companies to where they are today, and their journey is truly just beginning. To learn more about Larry the Legend and Keeley Companies, check them out at KeeleyCompanies.com.